Hello my friends, let's start this one from the drone sanctions applied on Russian territory regularly. For example, this night the drones visited Orlovsky thermal power plant. It is the biggest one in the region and used not just to power up the city and warm it, but for all of the oblast this facility was definitely crucial for Russians. In a way, it is the response on the Russian strike happened 2 days ago where Russians hit Ladizhinskaya thermal power plant, which is one of the biggest in Ukraine. And by the way, here Russians used the hypersonic Kinjal missiles, which is outstanding. Usually they use those against military targets, some of their Ukrainian military bases, but no, it is a civilian infrastructural object. Well, as you might see, Ukraine also has some of the missiles to respond because that strike on Orlovsky thermal power plant was conducted by Neptune missiles. Well, in this case, it's the long-range modification of Neptune because Orlovsk is not that close to Ukraine, but within 1,000-kilometer range, which is promised for Neptune 2. Yeah, it's definitely the huge facility out there, one of the biggest, as I said to you, and the biggest one in the region. It caused several of the blackouts, but not exactly for this train station and those houses. But Russia now struggles with electrical power supply. Also, kabooms were reported in Vladimir village. You see, there was the spark and immediately some certain blackout happened in several areas. Later on, this video was shown, so it's the local substation. Ukraine targets not just Russian refineries, but also electrical power supplies, as you might see, not just for the bordering Russian regions, but a little bit behind. And one more video from the place. Before it was the small fire, but later on it sparked widely in this place, and Russia now has to seek for the spare parts to repair it. But as we understand, there are some of the issues for the spare parts for Russia to obtain. Today there was the briefing in the President's office of Ukraine where Maluk, the head of the Ukrainian SBU, reported that Ukraine already used several of the Flamingo missiles to strike Russian facilities. Totally 9 of those missiles were used against Russian infrastructure, but from what I understood, I'm monitoring the Ukrainian long-range strikes. I saw just 2 successful attacks using that one, which is not that good, we all understand, but this missile is wet, it's just been produced, so of course Ukraine may modernize it. First of all, guidance and navigation system, and secondary, well, this missile has some certain flaw compared, for example, to Tomahawk missiles, because it's way bigger, it's way tougher, so the Russian air defense has no problem to recognize, identify, and shut down this missile, unfortunately. Russians already showed several times the debris of Flamingo lying somewhere in the field, so clearly missiles were shut down. That's why Zelensky called for Tomahawks, because they are time-proven, very reliable missiles and they're very hard to intercept compared to Flamingo. But still there is the chance for Flamingo to be outstanding if Ukraine works on navigation system. It should be complicated, missile should maneuver all the time to avoid straightforward flights. And in this case, Ukrainian Neptune also has an advantage because it is like Tomahawk, it's kind of nimble, it may fly for the longer distance. The only issue that Ukraine cannot produce those massively. But if you need a very swift, precise strike, I think it's better Neptune. Flamingo is just huge aviation bomb with a jet engine if you need the power, but it doesn't guarantee that the strike would be successful, as you see. At the briefing also it was mentioned that Russia lost 48% of the Panzer 1S air defense systems. While judging on the videos published by Primary Drone Unit, regularly from Crimea especially, Russians definitely lose a lot of the Panzer 1S. I also monitor frontline updates and drone videos which are being published in internet. Of course, I see many of the Russian Raiders and Panzer 1S and Buk systems were just annihilated. I hope I spell it correctly. But still Russia is capable to produce several dozens, not thousands, dozens of the Panzer 1S per year, but Ukraine nails them all the time, so Russia cannot compensate the losses. At least it was said by SBU chief Maluk during the briefing. Also, Maluk at the same briefing stated that Ukraine was successful in kaputting one of the Russian Oreshnik system near the launching spot of Kapustin Yar. He mentioned some sort of the sabotage operation, but still we don't have any sort of the videos or photo confirmations published. So I just hope that we're gonna obtain those. Nevertheless, one of the highest Ukrainian officials report about it, so maybe it is definitely true. Meanwhile, Belarus dictator Lukashenko threatens the Western partners, telling that if they escalate, they together with Putin may decide to strike them with Oreshnik, which has been deployed to Belarus already. Well, at least Lukashenko said that it was deployed but not yet fully in military service. Yeah, those two dictators like to threaten everyone around, but they're just bluffing. By the way, Oreshnik was already spotted in Belarus dictator's cabinet, so here we go. This is the Oreshnik. Wow, definitely a mighty system. So overall, today in this meeting, the Ukrainian leadership concluded to continue strikes deep inside the Russian territory, and Zelensky promised even more. Plus some of the new sophisticated Ukrainian operations from SBU. Well, it's gonna be very interesting. And Zelensky clarified the operation about Oreshnik. It happened actually the last year, last summer. Then Putin started to tell about Oreshnik, and definitely there was the kaboom in Kapustin Yar, in that launching spot. Well, Ukraine takes the responsibility for that. There were some of the satellite images even shared, as far as I remember. There was the moment then Putin stopped speaking about Oreshnik missile. Well, I guess it happened because of the Ukrainian special military operation on the Russian territory. Actually, I thought that it was unsuccessful launch of some of the ICBM or some what they test out there, Sarmat missile. But no, it appears like Ukraine conducted this interesting operation. Well, in this case, I think photos or videos will not be shared because it was long time ago, the last year, but was confirmed just now. Plus, Ukrainian military reported the kaput of the Russian Buk M3 and Nebo RLS, so radar system. Both of those were kaputted in the Russian region of Rostov, which is neighboring Ukraine. Alright, now to the front lines update. We have some of the good news coming from Konstantinovka. This is the northern part of the Sumy region, so the information about Ukrainian attack was confirmed, but not yet confirmed the full liberation of this village. The fight for it continues. Well, after all, Russians don't have the other way than to retreat to their own territory because they don't have supply lines going straight to this village. All of them were cut and controlled by Ukrainian drone operators. Ukraine uses aviation for JDAM strikes on Russian territory. Here it was the Russian command headquarters, and several of the JDAMs completely ruined this Russian station. And now let's go to Kupiansk. Zelensky said that situation there is stabilized, but we see new territorial gains. Russians were spotted on the left bank of the river Oskil, where they were targeted by Ukrainian drones. Nevertheless, their groups are presented here. Yeah, I wouldn't say that the situation here is stabilized, and Ukraine will have to withdraw the forces from the left bank entirely, because Russians cut supplies. About the Pokrovsk direction, well, there's some minor territorial gains from the Russian side. Ukrainian drones spotted them in a new blocks of this town, but there was no significant movement, and still Ukrainian army is not encircled in the Smirnograd, Pokrovsk direction or pocket, as we see it. Today, Ukrainian military command confirmed that there is the absence of encirclement, and Zelensky told to Putin to come and check personally in Pokrovsk if he is sure that Ukrainian army is being encircled, and we're all gonna see what might happen to him. So in case of Pokrovsk, no change is the good news for the last 24 hours. But if we check out the deep state military map source, the situation in Pokrovsk, it's a little different. So it was yesterday and it is today. As you might see, Russians expanded gray areas kind of widely in all of this place. And this gap between the gray area is less than 3 kilometers, so for sure Ukraine should absolutely withdraw the forces. If we see the gray area expansion near Sukhy Yar, near Moskovsk, it means that Ukraine start to withdraw the forces. I think it's going to be similar to what is happening in Torys direction and Konstantinovka. You see this wide gray area, nevertheless Russia is very slow out here. So in this pocket of Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, it could be something like that. Rodensky is still under Ukrainian control. But Russians try to go here through the very difficult terrain, a thin supply line to Krasny Liman, later on to meet their group from Pokrovsk. So this is the most important direction. This one with Pokrovsk, it's already understandable, but I think Ukraine has enough reinforcements to cut this Russian attack from Rodinsk. At least it's the only variant for Ukraine to act in Pokrovsk to somehow stop or slow down the Russian movement. Simultaneously, Ukraine should absolutely start to withdraw the forces from this pocket. It's already evident. Meanwhile, some of the crazy Russian military channels start to publish those kind of the maps that Rodinsk was captured by Russia and that Ukrainian army group has already been encircled, but this is bullshit. If you check out different Russian analytics, you may see that it's more or less what Deep State shows, but they put everything in the red area, there is no gray area. Well, here they put also everything red, but in fact it's not like that. And this is the Deep State with multiple of the gray areas, but I believe this source. And Russians, of course, they cannot create bridgehead in Pokrovsk yet. Just separate occasional small groups of the Russian army is presented in several areas, and in most of the cases they were just nailed by Ukrainian drone operators, but still they keep presence, and it's just a matter of time then Russia occupies Pokrovsk, unfortunately. And after all, Dnipropetrovsk region, well, I'm quite concerned about the situation happening because Russians, they're already in Novoalexandrivka. It is very close to Pokrovsk. Come on, update please. Yeah, it looks like the server is not loading correctly. Well, anyways, Russians are very close to Alexandrivka. Also, Russians again tried to attack towards Malatokmachka before they lost lots of the armored vehicles. It was a big, huge convoy. Well, today they decided to use a motorcycle instead of those heavy vehicles because the weather was nice and Ukraine spotted them on the way and kaputted. Yes. We have the video evidence from Ukrainian drone operators. This is the motorcycle. So totally 11 of the motorcycles Russia lost during a single attack, and more detailed video from the close perspective and Russian perspective of this kaboom you may find on my Telegram channel. In the video description there is the link for it. Again, there are some of the donkeys on the front lines that Russian army uses. Well, they do not use those everywhere, but still there are some of them donkeys, and sometimes they are crucially needed. Especially this time of the year, there's pretty much enough water for them to drink and they eat just grass around, still capable to carry lots of the ammunition and walk where humans can walk. So you don't need to have any sort of the fuel, any sort of the loud all-terrain vehicle, motorcycle. So actually there are multiple of the advantages in those donkeys. Yes, they are slow, but maybe it's the only disadvantage they have. And I'm not laughing, guys. Before, like, oh, donkeys in the Russian army, but even our soldiers write that they would like to have donkeys as well. I see that in the chat, in the military chat. Just imagine you have this thing, you can load everything you want on this one, and you can walk with it everywhere you want. At the same time, kind of silently, and they do not fight on the front lines. Usually they're a little bit behind. They're being used for supplies, food deliveries and so on. But Ukraine, yeah, there were already cases, then Ukraine kaputted those donkeys. It's not because the Ukrainian army is terrible, but because Russians are using donkeys. So from this morale perspective, I wouldn't use donkeys. But from the practical point of view, if you are not bothered with the speed, it could be a good tool actually. I'm not joking, absolutely, and donkeys are not elsewhere in the Russian army, just occasionally, but they like to film those, that's why those videos are being posted. I was also asked about this video. There is the camel, which Ukrainian soldiers took somewhere from the front lines. By the way, here something happened with M113 infantry vehicle. Our guys used the fire extinguisher and they pointed out at this camel, and some of the people say that it's the Russian camel, but actually it's not. It's not specified where this camel was taken from. It was just evacuated from the front lines. Could be in some of the private household or maybe local zoo, circus. There was no any sort of the information published that Russians used this camel for the military purposes. And I guess a year ago this image was taken. It is just for the photo. Russians didn't use this camel. Again, no information that it was used on the front lines. They took it just for posing. There's the zoo behind, and after all, people start to tell that the Russian army is fighting on camels, which is nonsense. But yes, they use some of the animals like donkeys and horses for supply deliveries, and I don't see a cringe there, and I'm not laughing about it because in practice those animals could be used. Well, not camels, of course, yeah, but they don't use camels. We shouldn't underestimate Russia as an enemy. It is very, very powerful. And if we check out the military map, and I'm reviewing this map for almost 4 years already, if we go at 2024, let's say beginning, yeah, you see, and compare it with today, you see that it's kind of the vast Russian advancement. Yeah, in some areas, like for example, from Bakhmut to Chasiv Yar, they moved by 10 kilometers and still were not capable to occupy Chasiv Yar fully. Recently, Russia lost a couple of the vehicles in this northern part. They want to go to Konstantinivka from several directions. But speaking about this southern area, Vuhledar, Velika Novosilka, Gulay-Pole, Kurakhove, soon is going to be Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, well, there Russia has advantage. And you see how close they're already to Zaporizhia. It might look distant, but compare the current territorial gains with Vuhledar, Vladimirivka, which was occupied by Russians the last year, so 83 kilometers here. And from this side to Zaporizhia, almost the same distance, 86 kilometers. And here Ukrainian defense line goes somewhere close to Pokrovsk, but it's the last line for Russians to break through and to reach Zaporizhia. On the south there are more Ukrainian defense lines, that's why they still cannot reach Stepnohirsk, but here they're very effective in this direction. Even if we go 1 month ago, September the 1st, you see, September the 1st and today, kind of significant movement. But the main focus for Russians is obviously Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Drushkivka, Konstantinivka. Guys, if they occupy and break through Ukrainian defense in this area, it's gonna be the open way for them to reach Pavlograd, Dnipro, even Kharkiv from the southern side. Because here Ukrainian defense is not that robust as in Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Drushkivka. So Putin is waiting for that. He is preparing lots of the forces right now to break defense, and after it he thinks that he will be more successful and way faster will be able to gain more ground. It's the calculation of Russia as I see it, and really it might work for them if the situation in Ukraine continues to deteriorate with Ukrainian military support and morale of people, because fighting 4 years against this prevailing enemy is very, very hard, even though Russia has losses. But if I check out the general situation on the front lines, I would say I'm not so much optimistic as many of the pro-Ukrainian speakers. I'm the one myself, but I see like what is happening on the front lines, reality. The only positive news for the last year is this direction, where with the help of the very capable Ukrainian armed forces, Russians were stopped, but it was very close to the total catastrophe in Donbas region. I'm saying like that also to underline that without the proper military support, Ukraine cannot sustain defending Donbas or Dnipropetrovsk region or even Kharkiv, and Russia will announce a new referendum out there annexing more territories of Ukraine, so Russia can only be physically stopped in Ukraine. Unfortunately, guys, it's like that. Diplomacy is not working with Putin, as we see. I guess it is understandable even for Donald Trump, who started to apply those sanctions. But I would also like to see more prompt reaction to support Ukrainian military. Also, we have more details from Financial Times why sanctions were applied on Russia and why the Budapest meeting between Donald Trump and Putin was cancelled. It's because of Russia. They officially sent the message to the White House demanding demilitarization of Ukrainian army, even not just for Ukraine to give up Donbas or something. No, full demilitarization of entire country. Well, even the current White House administration understood that it's just unconditional ceasefire of Ukraine, capitulation, and they say that Ukraine will never support it. It means that Russia doesn't want to stop, so let's apply some of the sanctions and stop talking with Putin, at least for now. Russia is still standing on its demands since the beginning of the special military operation. Oh, we have some breaking news coming from Venezuela. United States closed the part of the airspace and conflicting information is coming from that region. Some of the sources close to Pentagon are saying that the strike of the United States on some of the infrastructure of Venezuela is imminent. Then around half an hour ago, Donald Trump reported that all of that is not real, that the United States is not planning to strike Venezuela. Nevertheless, after his speech, some areas were closed for commercial traffic, Meanwhile, Maduro asks for immediate military support from Russia. They want to obtain some of the ammunition, missiles, and so on. But something tells me that Russia needs that stuff as well. I guess Maduro should learn the history from Syria, where Russia didn't help at all, but Syria is way closer than Venezuela to Russia. Well, a few days ago, indeed, one of the Russian cargo planes, Ilyushin 76, landed in Venezuela, but as you understand, one military plane is not enough to deliver something to this army to be really capable. And more breaking news we have coming from the United States of America. So Pentagon cleared giving Ukraine long-range Tomahawk missiles, leaving final decision to Trump. The situation is pretty much similar to Venezuela case because Pentagon already aimed the key points of Venezuelan infrastructure, leaving the final decision to Trump to act immediately or to postpone this decision. Well, if Donald Trump really releases Tomahawks for Ukraine, it's gonna be fantastic news because, as I said to you, this cruise missile is really outstanding. But of course, Ukraine needs hundreds of those, plus the ground launchers, and there is the problem with those. Well, maybe United States might test those ground launchers in Ukraine in active battle. My friends, thank you so much for your kind support on Patreon. The link for it is in the video description just below, and also on membership of the channel. You might press join button to join me here, and I promise to film more of the Patreon and membership only content, exclusive one. I just hope I'll find some of the free time tomorrow after today's Halloween stream, which is available for everyone on my Twitch and also my alternate or second channel, where I speak about absolutely every sort of the topic. So if you watch this video at the Halloween night, check out my resources. Maybe we're gonna meet each other on that stream. And also, guys, if you do not have the opportunity or willingness to support me on Patreon or membership, you may just press your huge like to this video and subscribe for the channel to boost this video in YouTube algorithms, because it's very important. Thank you so much for it as well. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.